It's Just Business with Steve Thomas and your host, Chris Larry.
Hello and welcome to another episode of It's Just Business on the Hogsty Network, the show where we look at dollars and the cents of the sports media business industrial complex, which just keeps chugging along 2 weeks by 2 weeks. How you doing today, Steve?
I'm doing all right, man. How about you?
Oh, not bad. Not bad. Got some fun and sun and an extended Mexican, what do they call those things? Destination weddings. So, destination weddings can be a mixed bag. So I'll actually tell you a funny story. So I have, as the people know, I'm a diehard Washington team, football team, Commanders, all those things, Redskins, Skins, Hogs, the whole nine. And I was at a destination wedding with no service to people that I only tangentially know because they're work friends of my wife during the Lions Commanders division game.
What to do?
I was literally walking out onto the beach, and the only spot I could get one bar was like by this rock outcrop, and where the water was splashing against the Pacific seawall, and stand there and just download the amount of texts that were coming from family change, friends chains, just like a whole slew of texts. But then those are kind of coming in out of order. So I'm just seeing like, that's not a fumble. What about a face mask? And I'm like, what is going? So finally I said to one brother and one brother-in-law, I said, I need you to just text me time left in game and score so that I can like a paleontologist, I can track the Mesozoic eras, rather than try to piece together this maze of texts. And so finally they won, triple confirmed, and I hit the dance floor at the wedding. But it was a little bit of a like, these are the first minutes of the season I'm going to miss all year.
Well, why didn't you just try to pull the game up on your phone as long as you were stepping out to?
Because that only thing it was doing was texting. Like,
you couldn't get any service at all.
I tried. Yeah, it was just like I was lucky to get texts. So there's my catch-22 sports moment.
Well, sorry about that. Yeah, no, here we suffered through the worst winter storm in 65 years down here. And I am one that never pays attention to the weather forecast ever. I never watch the news. I never pay attention to weather. My kid in here came to me like Sunday and says, it's going to snow. And I was like, that's stupid. No, it's not going to snow. We're not doing that. And he was insistent, no, it's going to snow. It's going to snow. And as it turned, and so we set a bet actually, because I still didn't believe him. And I said, the most we may get like a light dusting or something. It'll melt in an hour. That's all we'll get. And so we eventually set a bet, because I'm an attorney, I have to set specific criteria for this bet. And so the bet was 3 inches of accumulated snow at the house, not somewhere else, at the house. If it's under that, you have to vacuum the entire house. If it's over that, then pick what you want me to do. And he thought about it, and he goes, you need to do a snow angel in the yard with no shirt on.
Oof.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, well, that's an easy bet. I don't have to vacuum the house for a week. That's good. And it hit about 2.5 inches, which for us is a blizzard, and I gave him the win. And then in exchange, he let me do this with the shirt on. He said, I don't want you to get hypothermia. And so, but I did snow angels in the yard. Yeah, I did a snow angel in the yard in shorts and a t-shirt as a result of that. But I don't like that. I would much rather be 70 degrees. He was very happy. The girlfriend was very happy. The dogs were very happy. So all was well, I guess. But it was definitely a culture. And the ironic thing is, you were in Mexico at this time, so you were the one in great weather, and I was the one suffering through winter weather. That's a flip flop. That is
funny. That is quite the flip flops. In fact, I was in flip flops. Yeah, I saw, we were laughing at that because it I saw everywhere from UR to Austin, and then my family that's in the Outer Banks got like 6 inches of snow. So yeah, it was quite it. Most of the winter storms, I mean, they touched the Northeast some, and definitely more snow than the last couple of winters, actually. But it's been a southern-based winter so far.
Uh, well, and like Austin wasn't nearly as bad as where I am, but like Louisiana, they got like a foot of snow in New Orleans. Did you? You know, there was a video of people having snowball fights down on
Bourbon Street.
yeah, Bourbon Street, which is not something you'll ever see. So hopefully that will never happen again. I'm more than happy. I was able to wear shorts yesterday, and that made me happy.
Well, there you go. No, I think we're.
Do
I'm
you
so
want to embarrass yourself now or at the end of the episode? Because we're recording this on Sunday morning. By the time this episode comes out, all of the football today will be over, long over. So, do you want to make a prediction on this game and the Kansas City Buffalo game, knowing that when people hear it,
they can laugh at us.
yes, you want to take a stab at it? He's thinking, folks. I can see the wheels are turning.
All right, let me go the easy one first. I'm taking Bills
Bills, huh?
28-21.
Okay. Okay. Let me do that one. So, um, my rooting interest in that game is Buffalo because I'm sick and tired of the Kansas
As
City
is
Taylor
everyone.
Swifts. Yeah, and all of that. However, I find it too tough to bet against Patrick Mahomes. And he's got a connection with Travis Kelce that's working right now, really well. So I unfortunately, for everybody not named Taylor Swift and everybody not living in Kansas City, I think Kansas City will win this game in a close battle. I'll go with 28-24 Chiefs.
At this point, Taylor Swift is the only thing I like about the Chiefs.
I'm just sick of her. I don't have anything against her. I'm just sick and tired of seeing her every 5 minutes on TV. That's all.
The least annoying part. I hate.
I don't like any of them.
I hate the Chiefs. I can't watch any more Chiefs games, and now they're boring. At least they used to be exciting, right? Like they used to be a fun team to watch. Now they're just boring. So
well, they didn't have a great year
no.
by their standards. Their record worked out, but they got a lot of lucky
games. They're not fun TV. So, all right. Well, yeah, everyone's rooting interest. I actually think this is the year the Buffalo can tag them. All right. So the moment everyone's been waiting for. Listen, I don't want to be a negative Nancy, and I'm going to be rooting, and I would be. If people come and clown on me later, I would hope for nothing more. But I don't see a path for Washington through Philadelphia, especially considering the Cosme injury. I just think the magic dust wears out a little bit. I think it'll be in a competitive game. I don't think they're going to get spanked, but I think it's going to end up in like the 32-28 Eagles type of thing.
Yeah, so I was the only one to predict the Eagles to win on the Hogsty on the Thursday episode of the Hogsty. Both Alex and Dave picked Washington to win because they're homers. I can't remember the score I said. It was something along the lines of what you said. I think I said something like 31-24 or something like that. I will say that I put a poll up on Twitter, my one visit to Twitter in a month. And I said, be honest, not a homer. What's your score prediction for tomorrow's game? And so far, the poll isn't closed yet, but so far, 76% of Washington fans predict Washington to win.
I mean,
oh no, I'm sorry. It's 70%, and then only 30% predicted the Eagles to win. I'm with you. It's too much. They're too good. They're a better team. It's over.
And over would I don't want
to. They're playing with house money at this point.
Yes, there's nothing to. But at the same time, nothing will shock me. And also, I would love LUV to be wrong. So that and I'm putting $0 at this. I'm not like hedging and
Oh yeah, don't take our betting advice. We're not saying that. Right. I mean, it's too late for anybody to listen to this anyway. So,
but I just think the talent imbalance is what tips the scales of a close game.
So there you go. So you guys listening know the results. So you can be laughing at us currently with this little segment here.
Uh, all right, Steve. So, um, talk a little college football. Put a little bow on the college football season. It's been a couple weeks since it ended, but still, given at least some of the interesting college football, we'll be okay talking about this. We have recently crowned a national champion, Ohio State University, the Ohio State University, through the expanded playoffs. And we can now, with confidence, data, and quantitative quantitative evidence, say that the cost of a college football championship is $20 million. Would you agree with that, Steve?
Well, that's what Ohio State had to put in to buy their team. Let's say it like that. So, yes, this is, of course, now I lost the link to the story. This is the archetype of the NIL era. Here it is. I got it. Okay. We saw this. This is front office sports. I'm not 100% sure where they would. We got this
I sign up for
in an
their
email memo thing
yeah.
that Chris
It's
gets.
called the memo.
Right. And so this story is by Amanda Kristovich and Eric Fisher. The memo dated January 21st. Presumably it's on their website somewhere, I would assume. Yeah. So what this says here is Ohio State used about $20 million in NIL funds to build their championship caliber roster. Ohio State's believed to have one of the highest NIL payrolls of all college sports this year, offering more money to football players than most other schools in their entire athletic departments combined. And so I think we've probably explained this before, but the general gist here is that there's a limit to how much NIL money schools can spend. There isn't a limit to how much money their boosters can throw together separately necessarily, but in terms of revenue, there's a limit to this. And so what most schools do is they give most of it to football and basketball, and then they throw the scraps out to the other sports. What this story is basically saying is that Ohio State has dumped all of it, not all, most, an overwhelming majority of it into football. And so they have purchased this team. Now, this story mentions what I have been saying from the beginning, which is that they've created a new era of, quote, unrestricted free agency in college football this year, which is what I said from the beginning, which is, this is what you're going to get when you simultaneously say you can pay players and then open up the transfer portal so they can leave at any moment. So I don't necessarily think this is a good thing. I mean, good for Ohio State, I guess, if you're a Ohio State fan, but I don't necessarily think this is good for the sport overall to do this.
Well, if the given is that yes, this is a ridiculous, completely unregulated free agency of college sports. $20 million is going to sound quaint in a couple years.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
So, I mean, we can be shocked now, but continue to Earl clutch. And then we just did a story, I think the last show, about who was it? It was like some university that says we're just maxing out. We're just gonna.
Yeah, when Ohio State, it was somewhere. Yeah,
it was somebody else. And so here we are. It's amazing. We've been doing the show long enough where the quote unquote cost of a college football champion was $0, and now it's $20 million.
It was zero above the table dollars.
Yeah, the under the table, quote unquote. Yeah. But still, the above boardness of this is certainly fascinating, but it's not going anywhere.
Oh, of course, it's not going anywhere. I mean, this is the floodgates are open. I don't think there's any realistic way to turn this off, even if they wanted to at this point. There was, I mean, there's been a million lawsuits. There's this house case settlement that's kind of driving all this stuff. Some of this stuff.
It needs regulation. It needs rules are the only thing that you can do to manage it.
You know what the NCAA is maybe worse at, though?
Rules.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, the NCAA is very poorly run. The rules are stupid and make no sense. So they've done just a horrible job of controlling this. I mean, and the story gives a couple examples here of what Ohio State's done. Will Howard, the quarterback, They bought him from Kansas State. Recruit, so that's one in the spectrum. And the wide receiver, Jeremiah Smith, they bought him from high school. And so they do both. Um, Jack Sawyer has been, one of the few team players that's been there his entire career at Ohio State. So it's they're not just getting a bunch of transfer guys in here. It's also high school. How much can they can pay the most to everybody. And so that's what it is. I think so. Look, this isn't news. I mean, now we have a number on it. 20 million is what it costs Ohio State. But the bigger question to me is, what is the regulatory framework through which this might actually be less disgusting and more reasonably palatable within the scope of what is theoretically amateur athletics? To me, that's where this goes.
Well, yeah, I think one, you've got to have some kind of salary cap mechanic. You can do a luxury tax thing, like closer to what baseball does and to some degree the NBA, or you can have just hard cap that looks more like the NFL or the NHL, So, but one, a very, I say this simple, but it's obviously more complicated than that. But obviously, you put some kind of salary restrictions and you put some framework on top of that is your number one move. The number two move is you tighten the transfer portal so that's less attractive to bounce around so quickly. And then third, which is kind of same old story for us, is you at some point put this out into their own entity league. That's,
I mean, that's the thing they need to do most. It's also the least likely. We can babble on about it in our little show, but that doesn't mean the powers that be and the really want to do
that's
it.
why a salary cap mechanic.
Problem with the salary cap is you're going to get a bunch of lawsuits again. About the student, the quote unquote, the pretend students are going to file lawsuits again. About this. I don't know what a cause of action could be on it. I do know that there would be losses.
I take that risk, and I think you'd have if you do the salary cap in at least a half decent way, you might even be set up to win those lawsuits. So, I'd take a chance. The threat of lawsuits wouldn't deter me from that.
And the other thing, yes, I'm agreeing about limiting the transfer portal, or, I mean, maybe the other way to approach it would be that once you sign up for a school out of high school, there are some sort of limitations as to when you can leave. Like for example, I'll make something up. If there aren't academic problems and the coach does not leave the school, then you have to do, say, 2 years there. You can't immediately transfer.
Yeah.
I mean, something along those lines. The way it was originally, if everybody recalls, was that if you entered the transfer portal, you had to sit out an entire
just
year.
Revert to that would go a long way.
I just don't know if that's palatable towards the athletes. I don't really particularly care what the athletes think, but again, it just causes problems. You're going to get sued again over it.
Yeah, you'd have to come up with some creative things, but I do.
There has to be some rules around it wherein it's not just you can't have simultaneously legalized bribery and unlimited, unrestricted free agency at the same time.
There's two key pieces of evidence that, one, this is already something that needs to be managed much like a pro entity, and that probably people that want to be in this for a while know that some kind of rule structure is probably coming. And that is in college basketball, and stories we've talked about. In college basketball, that's Wojciechowski joining his alma mater as general manager. When's the last time you heard general manager associated with a college athletics program?
I'll give you a hint, never.
Right. And so he's there to do the things that we're talking about. And then in college football, it's the fact that Bill Parcells hired Mike Lombardi to do the same job, which was to be the general manager of the North Carolina Tar Heels.
Did you say Bill Parcells? You meant Bill Belichick.
Bill Belichick.
You really confused. Like, wait a minute, what did I miss?
Yes, Bill Belichick hiring Mike Lombardi, somebody he's worked with at multiple stops, to be the general manager. So in the two big dogs of college athletics, in the last 18 months, we have the general manager position basically being created out of thin air because it needs to, one, reckon with the system that exists right now and reckon with the system that is going to come to some degree in the future.
Am I the only one that's just totally grossed out by all of it? I mean, honestly, aren't these people supposed to be students? Isn't this supposed to be amateur athletics? What happened to that concept? It's just business. I mean, I know it's the theme to our entire show. I mean, that's what happened to it. And I'm whining, but it does kind of gross me out a little bit. Honestly, the fact that you need to have a general manager, which it's basically salary cap management.
Yeah.
Only there's no salary cap. It's basically
recruiting and salary cap management. Yes.
Lombardi and Wojnarowski, they are going to manage the money. And they're going to be money wranglers, basically. So those guys will have to be in charge of calling the boosters, getting more money in, from like the story we referenced is talking about. There's an organization called The Foundation with the word "the" all caps, says, which is, quote, a collection of boosters and donors that has both a nonprofit and a for-profit arm, as well as this 1870 society. I guess 1870, is that when the school was founded? I presumably, or I don't know.
I'm glad not to know.
Yeah. Okay, and then it says the athletic department of Ohio State officially declined to comment, but they got a source to say that the head coach Ryan Day is reportedly deeply involved in fundraising. Because, and this is why, by the way, Belichick has a GM. Belichick doesn't want to do all that. He doesn't have time for. At least he doesn't have time at age 75 or however old he is to do all that stuff.
He wants to oversee it, but he doesn't want to do the day to day.
Yes, and so they'll tell Belichick, you got to show up for this dinner, and then that's it. It's just so far from where we started with this. I look. I don't think it's a good thing for college football that Ohio State openly bought a roster. I don't necessarily, it's good for the fans and all, of Ohio State. I don't think it's good for the sport on a long-term basis if these teams can just buy rosters, because what's going to happen is we'll have even more of the haves and have-nots. Ohio State has a lot more money than Southeast Iowa State. I don't even know.
Well, it arguably has more money than almost Arizona State or Notre Dame, so it's not even that, it's also that they arguably have more money than even their peers.
Yes. And so what you're going to end up with is even more so than we had before. The large schools with wealthy donors will always have the best teams, and there will be virtually no chance of any little school coming out of nowhere to do well, like Boise State going undefeated, 10 years ago? Remember that?
Sure.
I mean, that's not going to happen. Because any decent player from a hypothetical Boise State team is going to get purchased by Ohio State or Michigan.
Well, they may have
or Texas,
seasons, but then and make the playoffs to fanfare and then get wiped out. So that,
I'm saying all their good players are going to be purchased by bigger teams.
Yeah. Now
that's not slavery. I guess that came out poorly. Yeah. Poached. Fine.
So what's interesting too is that, this was the first year of the expanded playoffs. So we got way more college playoff games.
It was a good thing, by the way. I actually watched a little bit of it for the first time in a long time,
but their ratings weren't great. And probably connected. The games weren't great. I think, but two of them were competitive into the fourth quarter. So I think there's some mixed returns on the first year of the expanded playoffs.
So again, the memo from Front Office Sports, dated January 23rd, Colin Saleo and Eric Fisher. It's titled CFP title game draws 22 million viewers, down 12% from last year. Now look, and so that game was Ohio State Notre Dame. Wasn't a great game. Did you watch it?
No,
I didn't watch it either, but it wasn't close. I didn't watch it because the game was never close, and Ohio State won comfortably. Last year's game, Michigan-Washington, drew 25.1 million. But you can't let go of the fact that this game was on Inauguration Day. Okay, that matters. And I'm not trying to be political. Some of you like Trump, some don't. It's not the point. Point is, a significant portion of the American public was watching inauguration activities all day because that stuff went. I watched like an hour of it, but it was going on all day long. Um, and I don't think you can just ignore that fact. That's number one. And number two, it was on a Monday immediately after a playoff weekend. So I think those two things are factors that this might have been a little bit of an anomaly of a ratings dip.
I would agree with all of those things. I would add that the ratings overall for all of the playoff games were down. So like, I mean, I guess there's no precedent for that many games. They didn't get I think they didn't hit some of the rating marks that they would have liked throughout the run of the playoffs. And I think it connects back to our previous conversation a little bit, but I also don't think it's that important. But one, the NFL just sucks up every bit of oxygen. So these games are having to fit in the cracks around the NFL calendar, which now includes, by the way, Christmas Day and a bunch of Saturday games. So, like, this isn't just like stay away from Sunday and Monday. This is the NFL is filling every available space, and these games have to fit within those cracks. And then to your point, there's fatigue. If you just gorged, division round weekend, you're a little hungover by Monday with kind of
I was. That's why I didn't really want to watch it. It wasn't political. It was like, this is another game. It's not competitive. I'm not going to watch
right.
this. It's too much.
And then to kind of really connect back to our previous conversation about this $20 million championship team is if it's a pro sport, we are now agreeing right now that college football in its current construction is essentially a pro sport. To call it otherwise would be ridiculous. It's a worse product. And I know there's college football nerds that will argue with me, but they're wrong. It's a worse product. So now not only are you having to go around, so now they're becoming the UFL of Alex Zeus's dream.
Kind of, yeah.
It's still inferior product that people would rather watch the pros, the league, the NFL, the Shield. So the more you become like them, the less distinct you are. So from a business standpoint,
but it's not as good as football because the players aren't as good. They're not.
That's what I'm saying, exactly. But and I can't believe I'm saying this, but some of the traditions and some of the just like, wait, what are we doing here-ness of what you're saying, I think actually does have a business negative side effect. Is that small? Is that something that you can deal with? Probably. But I do think those were differentiators between that and the NFL. If you're just becoming a lesser pro league, then guess what? You're a lesser pro league.
Well, yeah, I think that college football would be wise to figure out a way to move this whole schedule up several weeks.
They can't go head to head.
They can't go ahead.
Which is basically what this was. I know they weren't opposite the exact hour blocks, but it might as well be.
But you said it the exact right way. They're kind of fitting in the cracks between NFL playoff games, and you have to really be a freaking diehard football fan to want to watch whole weekend of NFL playoffs and then squeeze more college football games on Saturday. You either not married, not with kids, have a broken leg, something. Can't you live in a bubble? You can't leave the house. I mean, there's like nobody who can realistically, who's not a hungover college kid, watch all these games at one time. So what I think is they need to figure out, I don't know if they can start the season earlier because this is when theoretically semesters start, but they need to figure out how to move this whole event up like 3 weeks. That would help a lot. Get it out of the playoffs, out of the NFL playoffs.
Yeah, no, they got to have to figure.
And you can't do anything about the election. I mean, that's just. But you would avoid inauguration if the game wasn't in the middle of January.
Now, the reason why I don't think it matters that much, and we're actually just debating around the edges, is because these ratings are down a little bit.
But there are more games to get big ratings.
Right, there are more games to sell ads on. So more is more in terms of like what do they call it? Like inventory for ad sales. More is more. It's not. There's no, there's all right kind of reasons why less is more is a smart philosophy, not in ad sales. So like a slight ratings downtick doesn't necessarily affect the bottom line of that many games to sell that many ads on, and then coming soon, that many streaming subscriptions and blah, 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 blah. So I just think that's why none of this will backslide. And even if this year's ratings are kind of maybe what fits in to be the norm, everybody's still eating.
Well, in the story here, the front office sports story mentions that exactly. The very last paragraph says what you just said. It says, however, the numbers do not mean that the first year of the expanded format was a failure. The format was meant to increase the volume of high profile games, and it delivered in that respect. Even the first round of the CFP averaged 10.6 million viewers, just higher than all but 4 regular season games. And here's the other thing: I think the world is tired of bowl games. Everybody saw through by the end of the run of bowl games mattering. Everybody saw through them. Now, I think technically speaking, some of these games are actually the
Yeah,
Rose
they
Bowl
were.
and the Peach Bowl, or whatever, but that's dead. Okay. And I think everybody in college football is tired of exhibition bowl games. And so this is much better. It attracted interest. I watched a little bit of it. You watched a little
I
bit of
watched
it.
some, yeah.
Yeah. Um, and by the way, I think it's a good thing that Indiana was in there. Did they go far? No. But the point is, you got some variety in there. It wasn't just the SEC, the top 5 SEC and Big Ten teams, and there were some outliers in there that had a chance to be an underdog, and that's a good thing.
And if you're rooting for common sense league management player acquisition rules to be applied to college football, then I think your strongest argument moving forward is they've got to make these playoff games more competitive. And so you got, so there's got to be some reining in of the system so that Indiana's of the world that can get there can still compete while they're there because they just had too many blowouts. So if you're really looking at tweaking and saying what's going to be good for the sport as it's emerging, you've got to get like closer to 50% of these playoff games, being competitive into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, but I mean, if you just have Ohio State and Michigan and and Georgia and Alabama, I'm not going to watch it.
No, no,
If they have the same
this is my
teams every
point.
single
You've
year.
got to bring in that. You've got to have a salary cap. You got to have those mechanics so
Yes,
that Indiana's can compete. I'm just saying, if I'm college football, I went, okay, so what can we do to make sure that how many teams is it now to get in? 12?
12.
That these 12 teams can legitimately play
Manage the
each other.
salary cap so they just can't
Yeah, so they can
buy the best
these can be
teams.
good games because that's what's good for the long term of the sport's growth is
This
good
is what the
games.
NFL figured out
Yes,
a
exactly.
generation ago.
Yeah. So they're gonna that. So I think that's your best argument for common sense management rules applied to college football's free agency.
To tie the story back to the original story, I like it.
Call back.
So call back to it. Yes, that's I think 100% right. There's nothing more important in college football than managing the inflow of money and managing the transfer of players. Because again, I mean, Ohio State bought their team. It's in the rules. I'm not saying they did anything wrong, but they bought their team. Um, and that's ultimately not good for the sport. And it'll be just as ugly if people see, like I just said, the same 7 or 8 teams who are the wealthiest Texas, and these teams do it every year because they can afford the most. And so yes, salary cap. I agree with you, and I wouldn't worry too much about these ratings. Like I said, there's just a lot of, and there was horrible weather in part of the country, during that time, and there was a terrorist attack in New Orleans, and all these other things
Plus
going
cord
on.
cutting, which is the dominant reason anyway.
Well, and of course, then that leads to like, is there going to be some sort of streaming package on
Right.
pick your package, where you have to order pay $300 for the college football streaming to get all these games, and probably
Someday soon.
someday, yeah.
And if Netflix has anything to say about it, because we also saw, I think it's another memo. No, this one you got somewhere. Who knows? No, we got it from the memo. Nice
Well,
job,
there was
Jeff.
another Netflix story we'll get to that
Yes.
it's not, yeah.
That Netflix is doing gangbusters with their live events, which includes the NFL, the recent launch of their WWE. I think they're doing Raw, right? Is that what they're doing? And I guess coming soon, FIFA women's soccer. But their data is suggesting that their moves into live sports is smart.
Yeah. So this is a memo thing again, January 22nd. Eric Fisher, Dave Rumsey, and Colin Salea. It doesn't seem like they have a whole lot of people doing this memo thing. It's
No, a couple
always
guys
this.
is pumping it out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, um, The story is called Netflix Sports Strategy Unchanged Despite Growth, Events Not Season. That's the takeaway here. Okay. What this says is, most importantly, that Netflix is looking for event television. They're not necessarily looking for a season. So I don't think you're going to see them buy into Major League Baseball regular season where they're just streaming 30 games. And we've been through that. But point is, that's not what their strategy is. Their strategy is to buy a Logan Paul fight. Their strategy is to buy the Christmas Day NFL games. That may be a larger thing. The world's, I mean, nobody watches the World's Cup in the United States, really, but that's an event. The FIFA World's Cup, that's a limited time. What is that, a month or something?
Well,
Box.
Netflix is so international. So I mean,
Yeah, I know. That's
they'll do
I
this
was
with
where I was
cricket.
going.
We won't really know, but
We won't
they'll do
watch
it.
it, but
Yeah,
Europe will watch it. Everywhere else but the United States basically is crazy about soccer. We don't watch soccer,
we're
but
just
everybody
a
else does.
market within Netflix.
Yes, exactly right. And so they talk about that being their strategy here. WWE would be the same thing. And yeah, I lose track of what the different WWE packages are called. I can't
Extreme,
remember.
raw,
Yeah,
balls
whatever
to
it
the
is.
wall.
Yeah, right. I was trying to find the right paragraph in here. Okay. There's a quote from the co-CEO. That can't be something that works well. Co-CEO. Like I just watched Gladiator 2 the other night.
One of the worst movies I've seen in 10 years.
I didn't want to spend money on a theater, so I saw it on Paramount. And who came up with I don't know if this is historically accurate or not, the fact that there were two emperors, like
I do think
co-emperors.
there was a historical reference for it.
How did that it didn't work very well, at least not in the movie. But no, that movie was not it was very derivative of the last movie. You start off and you say the end of the first of the real Gladiator movie, the dream of Rome that was Rome will come true because Marcus Aurelius and Maximus caused it to happen. And then we just divert from that and go, in the first 5 minutes, we see the woman whose name I can't remember drags Lucius the kid out because the dream of Rome hasn't actually happened. And it was literally walking out of the Colosseum after he died. In
It's
this,
ridiculous.
yeah, and it was the same. It was the same movie. The emperor is just wearing a different suit.
It was
You know,
bad. I actually like all three of the lead actors, and I felt sorry for them, but they were not good in it. It was horrible.
the guy who played Lucius was pretty wooden and
Paul Mescal, who's
not
great
expressive.
and other things. He's multiple Academy Award nominee. I understand take your paycheck, but this is not you. I've actually seen him on stage. He's a fabulous actor. He was not well. It just was not good material. I'll leave
Not
it at
compared
that.
to Russell Crowe, especially.
But also, okay, fine. Who cares? Acting is secondary in those kind of movies to some degree, right? Uh, Action scenes were horrific. The
Who
CGI,
decided that there needed to be sharks in the
yeah,
Coliseum?
the CGI was
Where'd they
so
get
bad.
sharks?
It was so dumb. And this is just make a new gladiator story. It's fine. Gladiators are interesting. Rome is interesting on its own. Just write a new story about gladiators. It's easy. I could do
Yeah,
it.
it made no sense. And, I don't know where, like, how did Denzel Washington's character go from this, like, slave owning,
Right to power broker in like one
circus
scene.
broker? And yeah, I know how'd that happen. But
No,
anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to get distracted, but
it was so bad. It was so
I
bad.
literally
Don't watch
finished
it.
the last 10 minutes of it this morning. That's why I was thinking about it. Yeah, don't watch it. Don't spend money on it, at least. Anyway, so, where was I going with this? Yeah, event programming. That's what I was saying. But let's see. And of course, pricing. By the way, it says mirroring price hikes. Okay, perhaps the biggest threat to Netflix is consumer pushback to a set of price increases also introduced late Tuesday. Mirroring price hikes seen at many other places in streaming business. The new structure will introduce increases of $1 to $1.50 per month. Plans now range from $7.99 to the ad supported tier, which they didn't used to have, to $24.99 a month for the highest premium level tier. And so that's just price creep. And the reason is, look, people, if we're going to have NFL games on Christmas Day and, Mike Tyson fights, we have to drive the income to do that from somewhere. And so it's got to come from you. It's just an excuse to raise the price.
If you consider Netflix a giant department store of media entertainment content, then the Logan Paul fights in the NFL, even with their, you know, price busting, sticker shock costs, are loss leaders because they just draw people in. It's like, how Best Buy used to sell CDs so that you could, come walk out with a refrigerator, because, they like bring you in with Logan Paul and then they keep you around with their shows, movies, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Sorry, we had a bit of a technical snafu there for those of you wondering. Yes, it's a Ventel. It's exactly like putting, it's exactly like, putting the candy by the door,
Yeah.
to draw you in, and then they sell you the expensive stuff, which is back in the corner after you wander around for a while. I think Netflix is a little bit less of a department store now than it used to be, only because when they started, when they gave up on the monthly, mail you DVD routine, they were really the only streaming service there was. And so they had access to a lot more material that was not theirs. Now, because the department store would suggest that there's 15 different brands in the department store and they're, purvey of all things. Now, a lot of this is their own content. So I don't know. I mean, I get what you're saying, but it's a department store. It's Target, but with all Target branded material in it. Or, I guess that's what I'm trying
Yeah,
to
that's
say.
why they've gone heavy on international, because they could do all these cross licensing stuff. Yeah, once everyone wanted to get into their own libraries, their own streaming services, then everyone basically pulled their IP off of Netflix. But I have noticed like Max now license a ton of stuff to Netflix, so people are starting to license back to them. So we'll see. But to your point, this is why they're building a sports department.
Yes. Now, this
with a
story
news department to follow, probably.
could, sure. Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
let's maybe not hard news, but let's call it more live
Event.
events that aren't sports.
Is there some reason why Netflix couldn't cover like the inauguration, for example?
Right.
They could. So this story also goes into a little bit of subscriber data for Netflix. Says better than expected subscriber growth to 301.6 million globally. And the stock share price went up 15% to nearly $1,000 per share, retreat a little bit back to $954 a share. But so if anybody wondering what the amount of subscribers for Netflix, 300 million globally. I don't know what I thought it would be, but that's what it is. Okay.
You know what an
I don't.
interesting thing to look for Netflix
What's that?
is them buying the international, or not that'd be the whole globe, but targeted international distribution rights of U.S. sports.
That's what they're doing. Oh, you mean international?
So like if you're so if you want to buy, if you're in India, you can only buy an NBA package through Netflix. So that Netflix so it's like, because that's actually how a lot of their international content flows back and forth across the globe now. So they already have a working business model for it.
Well, as an example, Squid Game started out as a Korean thing.
Right, exactly. So it'd be interesting to see if they said to some of these leagues, hey, let us be we'll pay you, obviously, negotiate the price, and we'll be the sole delivery mechanic for the global south or for Australia or for X region. Even we won't touch any of your current contracts, blah, blah, blah. That's
an interesting thought. That is an interesting thought. Could you pull that off in the NFL? I don't know the legal reach of the YouTube package. Now the NFL does have its NFL Plus, Premium Plus package, which we at the Hogseye are a subscriber to, and so you can get all the games after the games are over. You're talking about streaming live while they're happening, and I don't know what, again, the reach of YouTube is for the NFL, because YouTube, you can already do that.
Yeah, I don't think their paid services are as mature as Netflix is globally in terms of subscriptions.
Oh, I'm sure there's definitely not.
It's so but the comp would be like in England, you have to buy the NFL package from something called Sky TV. And what Sky TV is basic, because most of media is like the BBC and blah blah blah. It's government subsidized, blah blah blah. So, but Sky TV is basically pay TV in England. They pay the NFL for the exclusive broadcasting rights of the NFL in the UK. And we know the UK is probably what the number 2 market right now for the NFL. Um,
Probably
uh, and so Sky TV pays the
far
NFL.
behind
NFL.
the United States. So,
Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm just saying, obviously. But and so the NFL gets a little bit of a payday from Sky TV, and then Sky TV is how you watch NFL in the UK. And that model, I think, would be interesting for Netflix to replicate.
this brings us neatly along to another story, which is probably where you were going with this. Um, Sportico had a piece called Streaming Piracy, a Problem That Demands New Solutions by Michael McCann, who we've done his stories several times, January 6th. And so it says that there's 2 popular streaming sites are being shut down, Meth Streams and Crack Streams, which have been streaming live sports content forever. And so this is, these are guys running these sites that have hacked in somehow to NFL, NBA, MLB broadcasts and are streaming them on their website. And these, I've watched many a Washington game, not on these 2 sites, but on similar sites, which I won't name. But this is piracy. And that some of these get shut down, sometimes, and apparently this Meth Stream, this Crack Stream did. So they have some stats in here. It says one study found about 11% of U.S. adults admit to pirating live TV sports. Another survey found 1 in 4 admitted to unauthorized streaming of NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball games. And then nearly 2/3 of millennials, which is people born between 81 and 96, acknowledge having watched sports or illegal streams. And obviously, this is, I would say it's hurting the revenue of the sports more so than it's hurting the advertisers, because most of these things you still have to watch the commercials. They're not editing commercials out of these things, but what it's doing is it's deleting a ton of revenue, apparently 28 billion from all the streaming fees for the legal streaming sources. And this isn't the first time this came up. This is the first time I've ever seen a story on it.
I mean, piracy. I mean, in the digital world, piracy is going to be a constant. So they can obviously do things to fight it, but I think the pirators will always be a half step ahead. And that's why someone like Netflix, who has a much more robust infrastructure than many other streaming platforms, will become more and more attractive, because they'll be closer to keeping up with the pirates from investment, infrastructure, and cost perspective than streamers down the line. In fact, when you do see like illegal NFL streams, they often are Sky TV feeds that are being pirated. So, because they don't have, so it's interesting to me, this helps Netflix ultimately. Also, quite frankly, I view this the same way with crocodile tears, when I hear about the big box stores and their shoplifting problem, and suddenly now we have to ask for help in an understaffed store to get our toothpaste unlocked for us at Rite Aid. So I think it's ridiculous. I think they're overhyping this so that they can put more restrictions, more BS password management things, up the fees, and they're just passing whatever this 28 billion, which I would, we're not going to dive into those numbers too deeply, but
the story doesn't.
They're industry produced, I'm sure. Some industry quote unquote nonprofit or something, kind of quasi journalistic thing probably put those numbers together, and boohoo, and they're just going to pass those on to the consumer in the end anyway, no matter how much it is.
So the story, for the record, got 28 billion from Harvard Business Review, which
all right, that's more reputable.
Yeah, but okay. So for those who don't understand this is one of these student produced,
graduate students,
graduate students, quarterly, monthly, whatever it is, publications. But those things usually have real writers in them. They're just student produced, and so there
have some kind of standards about what kind of data they use. So I'll take back some of the quasi fakeness, but I still think it probably is industry friendly.
I worked on a law review journal in law school, and yeah, you do have like real columns in it, and it's not just there were student columns And then there were the real columns that actually mattered were the ones from, the prominent attorneys that would submit them. So that's kind of what Harvard Business Review is. That doesn't mean we didn't read the story. Who knows where it told? But anyway, that's 28 billion. But what I've wondered about this is Netflix right now is a monthly subscription. Are they going to get to the point where it costs them so much to get the Tyson fights and the NFL Christmas Day games, where then we're going to have much like pay per event on a service that is already a monthly subscription fee? Are we gonna you're gonna have to pay another $30 to get the next Tyson fight on Netflix? Nobody's
Yes.
mentioned this, but
Yes.
see, you immediately
That's
see
coming. And I think
and that's when I check out.
Yeah, that it'll look like this. Special, because they'll offer their subscribers something quote unquote special. You'll get the right to pay $9.99 for the event.
When the rest of you losers have to pay $30.
Right. So if you want the golden pass for, activate Netflix for 6 hours while, Logan Paul fights George Jefferson or whatever,
that wouldn't go well.
then you can pay $30, right? For you special subscribers, you only have to, add this one-time cost of $7.99 to your bill to watch the same content. It'll look exactly like that.
Yeah, and again, that's when those of you who are like me who are cheap are just going to check out again, and then that comes back to our streaming service, our pirated streaming sites. That's why people do those. It's not that people don't want to subscribe to Netflix; it's that they don't want to pay a fortune to get one fight.
And that overhead is already factored for in the pricing of those events.
Yes. And it's 28 million. That isn't lost. That's just 28 million in less profits overall as a giant sports industry than they could have. But they're still making a butt ton of money, people.
Yeah. Which the honest subscriber is subsidizing the loss.
Yes. They're just estimating how much more money they might make if everybody who was streaming crack streams and meth streams
would
turn around and pay. Yes, which that isn't a thing. There's people who just won't. Like me, I'm not going to do that. I don't like subscriptions. I'm just not. So, what else is interesting in this story? They mentioned, the throw the bone to the pro player crowd is in the story too. They're talking about how the poor players are hurt by this because the extra 28 million is could be revenue to the players because they're so mistreated. It's just awful.
That's how industry friendly this was, right? Like,
yes,
it was
that's my point.
Let me tell you about all the people it hurts.
And they're even mentioning D1 athletes. These poor abused D1 athletes are losing out on income that they could otherwise have. Yeah, spare me. Spare me. The NFL Network had to conduct layoffs last year, and it's because you evil people are pirating things on crack stream or whatever are the problem. Yeah, boohoo.
I think we're done with Netflix for a couple of weeks. We've been tracking this now. Now they're solidly standing in the pool, and then we'll see what their move is. To continue to wade in, dive in more, do laps.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to mention here, the last thing, they mentioned something called the Digital Millennium Copyright Act in 1998. Bill Clinton signed into law. I don't know what that is at all. I wanted to mention it because the story mentioned it, but I have not read a single word of it. I have no input into it whatsoever. I don't know if you know anything about it.
I know a little bit about it, not enough to sound that smart without refreshing myself. But it is basically a set of laws that much of the digital age that is sort of, it was forward thinking at the time, probably a little bit out of date now, but it still is it's the best structure in place for what became the digital age shortly thereafter.
Yeah, yes. But I have no comment on it because I haven't read it. Yeah. So there you go. All right.
All right. So, we like to clown on LIV Golf, even though no one clowns on the money that's being spent in and around it. But it does have now an official broadcast home, I think, with a something that you can watch on some version of TV as early as February, I believe. And that is that Fox Sports is now the U.S. home of LIV Golf.
Yeah, CNBC had this, a CNBC Sport in particular. LIV Golf announces multi-year media rights deal with Fox Sports by Russell Leung, dated January 16th. So, for those of you living under a rock, LIV Sport came along a couple years ago, and it's run by basically the Saudi National Investment Fund, which is called the Saudi, I believe it's called the Saudi Investment Fund. And they bought a bunch of the best players from the PGA Tour to do this. They've put a ton of money into it. The only TV contract they got was through the CW network, which has not worked. The big announcement, what, 6 months ago was it or so? Maybe we did a story on it wherein the PGA and LIV Golf announced that they had reached like a basic framework of
I
negotiation.
think it was more like 18 months ago.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
They had reached a basic framework to negotiate a merger, and then nothing became of it at all. There's been not one word about it basically since then. So this is Fox is now going to broadcast LIV Golf. Fox is a much better platform than CW. And so the concept here is that Fox is going to make LIV Golf a thing that it isn't now. It's very good for them. I don't know if it'll work, but just the names alone, they're going to get a lot more viewers, I think, than they did on CW.
Oh, it's like, it's like, well, I'll continue my Jefferson's theme. It's going to Penthouse in the Sky.
Some of these people listening don't even know what the Jeffersons
That's
is.
fine. Google it. Time is a flat circle now. So you're going straight to the top here. I mean, at least you need at least top uppermost levels in TV contracts. So and again, this is very much in a U.S. context here, but this makes this is a whole new realm for them. It makes them something that we kind of scoffed at to something instantly legitimate because of the players. And yes, it's been very strange about that. We have seen nothing about this merger, but I do think what it did usher in was a sort of era of detente, because remember, they were at each other's throats, and some more cross-pollination of allowing players to play in some of these events and stuff. And a little bit like you can be seen with players from the other league, kind of quote unquote. So I do think that detente era has also been a huge boon to LIV, because and now they've got, a major US TV contract, and people can go back to lazing out on the couch and watching professional golf and the golfers they like without really having to think about it.
Yeah. And not only that, they've also hired a real CEO. Now, Greg Norman was the tour's first commissioner and CEO. Greg Norman is a golfer, not a business guy. The new CEO is a guy named Scott O'Neill, who apparently was the former CEO of Merlin Entertainments and Harris Blitzer Sports Entertainment, which for Washington fans is Josh Harris's company that owns the 76ers. So he is the CEO. I think it's important because you have a real business guy. He's an American. He's not a Saudi. Having a Saudi as the face of this, you call it racist or whatever if you want, but that wouldn't go over nearly as well as having an American business guy in charge. I think it's a massive, massive step forward. I don't know what possessed Fox. I guess Fox is being forward thinking here. They see some of the stars, who are at Phil Mickelson, Dustin Johnson. There's many others, John Rahm, Bryson DeChambeau. And I think they see the names more so than anything else. Now the structure is a little bit different than a PGA tournament. If you guys haven't watched it, this is like a team thing. Okay. Apparently there are 13 teams of 4 golfers each, and then they're facing off with each other. It's not just a solo act. And so it's a slightly different structure. But yeah, I think more than that, I think Fox sees it as, oh, look, there's golf on a Saturday. I'm going to lay on the couch and watch golf. And they can get that crowd, and then they can attract a few more of the Phil Mickelson fans will, check in. And the CW just isn't a sports network. At least they don't have a history of it. Fox is. And so I think it's a major step up for them.
No, it was a kind of a, CW was already like a CD level content network at all, even though it's got shows people like or whatever. But
it said as an objective standard here, this thing says that they had 90,000 viewers on CW for the league's individual championship match in September. which was both really, really, really low. That's like local TV numbers.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
And it was apparently a fraction of the audience it had when the league kicked off, according to this, quote
wow.
unquote.
I didn't see that downward trend. Yeah, so this is massive. I got to be honest. I think it's somewhat strange bedfellows here. Fox Sports, which is still in the Murdoch empire, and like things like 21st Century Fox.
Well, at the end of the day, they're making a bet on money.
Yeah. No, yes.
If you're talking about the politics of it, Murdoch being a political guy and it's the Saudis, I think that gets trumped by we can make this a thing and make money on it.
Oh, 100%. But that doesn't. I'm just noting
it's a bit odd. Like you wouldn't think that the Fox network would be the one to sign up for it. Maybe that's, I guess, what you're saying. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that is the perception thing that I am pointing out. I think of course, Fox News is not the same thing as the Fox. His family would be involved with the Saudis. That shocks me 0%, and I understand all the money parts of it, but it is odd. I think they'll be fine. I think what it does is it's the final reputation wash for LIV Golf and the Saudi involvement.
Well, there you go. It's like Fox News has a reputation in a political angle, but Fox Broadcasting Network really doesn't. So I think that's not that. But yes, this is legitimizing LIV Golf, and believe me, they're going to highlight the Scott O'Neill guy. They're not going to highlight whoever the Saudis are running the Saudi investment fund. They're going to be silent in this.
Oh,
they don't want. You won't hear from them at all. The face of it will be this, and we're a great American company doing golf in the United States, and come watch us on the All American Network Fox. Yeah. I told you I tried to tune into this. Couldn't even find it on CW. It took me a while to find it. In Fox, this is something everybody pays attention to.
You'll know right where to go.
Yes, exactly right.
And because I think we will see, I think the detente will kind of calcify and we'll just see these two leagues coexist. But coexisting can look a lot different. Do we see an all-star league? Do we see, teams in the PGA do team competitions against?
Well, the smart thing would be do worldwide golf, go in the winter time in the United States, go to Australia.
Right. Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
I do think you'll actually see those kind of things eventually happen, which, by the way, having a massive TV contract goes a long way to LIV Golf being able to come to the bargaining table for those kind of things going forward. Because that was the one thing PGA had over them.
And by the way, just because the PGA LIV Golf merger thing disappeared, this is really, really, really complicated. Okay. And so what I think happened a year and a half ago, whatever, I'll take your word for it, was they sort of reached an agreement, a really basic agreement to negotiate, an agreement that maybe we do want to merge. And that's it. They didn't ever have an agreement in place. There's a ton of money, things, and contracts. And again, it's worldwide. And so it takes a long time to do that. And so that's why it'll probably happen at some point.
They agreed to coexist for the time being.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, the war was over because there was like a business war between them, and so that ended. And we will try to merge, and that's kind of where we are, and that's where it stayed.
Yeah, so that's a big chip in the favor.
You're not launching fireworks at your neighbor anymore. You might not like him, but you're not actually attacking him anymore.
I actually did have a neighbor fire fireworks at us for multiple years. So there you go.
Did you respond?
No, because I knew what escalation meant. Sometimes
that's not good.
But I had some proxy battles. It was mostly a Cold War though, with flare-ups. Steve, it must be an exciting time at the Hogsty. Although maybe, so by the time you listen to us here, the Hogsty is either running into uncharted territory for the run of the podcast and a Super Bowl run up, or is doing, probably a little bit of a sad, but probably pretty interesting recap and look forward for what's next.
The podcast is already in uncharted territory. We've never, the podcast wasn't around when the last time Washington got to this level.
Podcasts weren't around.
No, but yeah, that's right. Podcasts weren't around. But either way, I would just remind people, that if you're a Washington fan, you're kind of playing with house money, as I said at the beginning at this point. So, we both predicted a loss. you'll know as I'm saying it, you will know whether we're right or wrong when this comes out. But I would say be happy about it. And you can find out all of that every Thursday on the Honk Sty and in all of our normal, regular written content.
Here's one thing you can say: it will be the most fun off season you've had in 31 years if you're a fan.
Unless you like stories of hookers on boats and, congressional testimony about abused cheerleaders.
No, let that move to other franchises. I do
I
love.
kind of enjoyed covering those stories. I got to be honest. It's at
Really, it
least
was a lot for you to chew on there.
it was the legal guy is buys into. I'm the one that read the whole congressional testimony.
Well, apparently, like if you read that Van Natta Wickersham story, there's still a bunch of, I mean, if you just wanted to follow Snyder's travails, they're far from over.
I don't have it in front of me, but and we got to sign off here. But Chris is talking about ESPN published a long story, but like, where are they now? Story on Snyder about how just depressed he is, and he's still fighting some of these battles. He's hiding out in England, and
It's a pretty fascinating story. And those guys were kind of on the Snyder beat that whole time. So
yeah, and collectively we can all say screw that guy.
Yeah.
No matter how you feel about the fan base now, we can all say screw that guy.
Yeah, totally.
Fan.
All right. So we will see you in 2 weeks, probably with a little Super Bowl talk.